Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Welcome to the Philipstown Planning Board meeting for April of 2024. This is a very atypical meeting, as we will be having a joint public hearing with the Conservation Board, which we have not done before. We're going to cover Planning Board business for two matters besides the administrivia. Then we're going to have the public hearing. Then if we have time, we're going to cover another Planning Board matter at the end. So call the roll, Cheryl.
Joe Burden.
Aye.
Dennis Gagnon.
Here.
Peter Lewis.
Here.
Laura O'Connell. Here. Neil Toman. Heidi Wendell. Here. And Neil Zuckerman.
Here. Okay, thanks. All right. Approval of the minutes. March minutes were shared electronically. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second it.
Comments, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstention, minutes pass. Do you want to cover this letter from KPB?
Dear Chairman Zuckerman and board members, on behalf of the applicant KPB Properties LLC, we inform you that we are not yet ready to resume the review of the site plan with your board. Due to workload constraints, Badey and Watson is now designing an SSTS rather than the owner's other consultant. Finalizing the other components of the site design is dependent on the location of the septic. We have begun soil testing and will begin design when it is complete. Rather than submitting an incomplete package, we are again advising the board of our intention to make a complete submittal for the May Planning Board meeting. Thank you for your continued attention to this project and your service to the town. Yours truly, Badey and Watson, Margaret McManus.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions on that? Okay, hearing none. Let's cover Krasniqi Plaza. Share with us?
Sure. Adam Thyberg, Inside Engineering Surveying, Landscape Architecture PC, representing Krasniqi Plaza LLC. Just for a quick update, since we were last before you, we've provided updated architectural drawings for your review. They're here tonight. I think the architect's done a nice job, put together what is really going to be a pretty beautiful building. We've also provided on the site plan some additional evergreen screening on the northern and southern perimeter based on comments that were received at the site walk and from the board. We have also, just for the board's information, we've submitted to the DOT for the highway work permit. We've responded to Ron's comments and we'll be providing a SWIP to Ron with or prior to our next planning board submission. So happy to respond to any outstanding comments that the board might have, but obviously given the amount of information material that we've provided, the hope would be that the board is ready for public input and will be ready to schedule a public hearing for next month.
Ron, comments?
The applicant has resubmitted the site plan documents in response to prior board comments at the time of the site visit. There's still some outstanding technical issues to be resolved, but I believe at this point they're ready for the scheduling of a public hearing.
Okay, nothing else to add? Board member questions? We had a site visit on March 10th. Any board members have any questions for Adam? None? Okay. Let's have a motion to schedule the public hearing for our next board meeting for the May meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second. Okay, thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion passes. Public hearing will be scheduled, duly noticed for the May meeting.
And you'll hopefully, are there any outstanding items tied to Ron's notes on the plan? I note that Ron and this board has spent a lot of time talking about non-service businesses that are properly screened. Is your plan fully in compliance with that?
So this is the plan, the landscaping plan. At the moment, we do provide a landscape buffer in the rear. We've added to our evergreen screening on the north and south side. And of course, we have a planting for the island at the front of the property as well.
All right, great.
So we've provided what we think is ample screening.
All right, thank you, Adam. All right, so any other issues on this matter? Anyone want to raise anything? Steve, anything from you?
No, I think you're ready for the public hearing. I think you're doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
We'll see you in May. Okay, Mace, Carvill, we had a site visit on April 7th. Ron, do we need to hear anything? I don't think the applicant needs to give us any more commentary unless you'd like to
Not
say
at all.
something.
The overall project is one that typically would not even involve the planning board. It involves the proposal to construct a garage behind an existing residence. The applicant only got encumbered by the town's environmental regulations in terms of where it must be placed. The entire property involved in the application lies within regulated slopes, and so he was tripped up by that issue and has gone through this process. With the completion of the site visit by the board, he's now ready for the scheduling of a public hearing.
Great, okay. All right, can I have a motion? Actually, any questions coming out of our site visit anyone want to raise? I know most of us were there.
I would just say it was very obvious that it's much better to locate the garage where they're planning to locate it than wending the driveway's way behind the property and having a lot more asphalt. So I was very convinced by the site visit that this is a good plan.
Good. Any other comments? All right, hearing none, motion for the public hearing, which I'll also suggest we do at the May meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Peter, second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Dennis. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Motion passes. Public hearing will be then. We will see you at the May meeting as well. Thank you very much, sir. Okay.
I only have one more
Oh.
question on that. Only
Oh,
because
hold on.
No, I'm trying to simplify the process. Because the project is so minor, my only wonder is at the end of the public hearing, do you want to be ready to act on?
Yeah, so Ron, thank you for that. I actually spoke to Steve about it, actually mentioned to the applicant as well, because that was mentioned at the site visit, and after consulting counsel, while I have great empathy for the topic, and I do agree that this is more of a administrative topic, we have, at least through counsel and I think some decent thinking on this. We are concerned about the precedent setting of doing that. We don't know if someone from the public will come to a public hearing, suspect they won't, and I appreciate the peculiarities of the planning required and the causing the incremental month, but it is 1 month, and I think given I've been on this board over a decade, I can see why it's the obviation of the need for a precedent-setting move to support the client is probably not something we want to do at this time. So I apologize for that, but that's.
Appreciate the comments. Just so it's a detached garage, so we're going to have 5 meetings before the planning board. Every meeting is costly, and also. It is minor in nature, but also there's a lead time for ordering the timber, and
I suspect. I'm kind of guessing it's going to get approved.
I appreciate that. But
So my guess is if you want to go order your stuff, I'm going to guess that we're not going to have a major impediment to it. I'm not going to say that in writing, but I'm going to tell you it's a guess. So I think if that's what you're concerned, I wouldn't be worried about it. But I think we have to follow our procedures. As I've been told many times, our job is to implement the code, not make the code. So, thank you, sir. Okay, all right. We're gonna have a little break for, if you wouldn't mind, smoke them if you got them. We're gonna just change some seats out for a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, and have my friends from the Conservation Board, Andy, MJ, and who else is the next up on your. Lou, thank you. And so, thank you, Joe, Heidi, and Laura. We're going to just send you down, having the most. Yes, sir. Yes, it's too. I said we're going to. It's got to be at the end. I don't want to start a whole new project. All right, thank you for that interlude. Hopefully that wasn't too long. Cheryl, why don't you read the postings, please?
The Planning Board and the Conservation Board of the Town of Philipstown, New York will hold a joint public hearing on Thursday, April 18th, 2024, at the Planning Board's regular monthly meeting, starting at 7:30 p.m. at the Philipstown Town Hall, 238 Main Street, Cold Spring, New York, to consider the following application. Garrison Golf Club, PDD, Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival, 2015, Route 9, Garrison, New York, 10524. The Planning Board will be considering the proposed subdivision of the site as well as the site plan application for Phase 1 of the site's redevelopment. Phase 1 includes the installation of the new open-air theater cluster, including the back of house, concessions, and the restrooms, and installation of the new main parking lot and proposed walkways and the service road to the theater. Associated grading, lighting, stormwater management, and utility infrastructure will be provided to serve the above improvements. Phase 1 will also include the intersection improvements at the access driveways and a new traffic signal at Route 9 and Snake Hill Road. Commencement of the signal work is contingent upon approval of the New York State Department of Transportation. The Conservation Board will be considering an application for a freshwater wetland permit necessary for all proposed improvements proximate to the town-regulated wetlands, watercourses, and their respective buffers. These activities are limited to Phase 1 of the project and include excavation for reconstruction of the existing Route 9 entry, placement of suitable soil over former greens 13 and 14, installation of additional paving to improve the Route 9 entry, and installation of water main, dry hydrant, electric panel, and subservice electric service line near and along the upper Snake Hill Road entry in the vicinity of the on-site pond. Dated at Philipstown, New York, this 21st day of March, Dennis Gagnon, acting chair.
All right, Steve, why don't you just remind the public where we are in both processes so they have a sense of where we are, please, and for the boards themselves.
All right, just a little background to orient the board. The Garrison Golf Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival project had a number of different facets to it. In terms of the land use approvals, they sought subdivision and site plan approval. In terms of permitting, they required, of course, subdivision, site plan approval, a freshwater wetlands permit, a zoning change, and all of that, for all those approvals, they had to go through SEQRA review. SEQRA review was review the potential adverse environmental impacts of the project taken as a whole. SEQRA review is done. The town board has granted the zoning amendment required for the project. And they are now back before this board as well as the conservation board for site plan approval, the subdivision, and the freshwater wetlands permit. The subdivision is clear and is going to be finally pursued to its end, that is to say, at this time. So too with the freshwater wetlands permit and any improvements that are required as a result of it. Site plan, however, is going to be pursued in phases. That is to say that there are a number of different uses on the property and structures on the property that are envisioned by the applicant. And it would be too much of a financial undertaking, and probably there's no need at this time as well, although I can't speak for the applicant on that issue, to build everything all out at once. So there are some things, the open-air theater, for example, the parking improvements and the like on the property that are proposed to be constructed at this time, and that is what is before the planning board right now. If you, and I'm sure you did, look at the site plan, the documents that were submitted. Sheet 5 of 16 shows the overall site plan, everything that's envisioned and proposed long-term for the site. And sheet 6 shows what it is they're proposing to build in the immediate future, what it is they're seeking approvals on tonight. So in terms of the issues that are to be considered, the CB's issues are pretty clearly set forth. Anything pertaining to the developments that require the freshwater wetlands permit. The planning board has kind of a two-stage view that they're taking of this. The first and the most important and immediate is phase 1, which is to say the immediately proposed improvements, and whether they're laid out properly, and whether whether changes should be made to them as a result of, well, whatever concerns you may have over the nature of them. But also, you have to kind of take the longer view of the things that are envisioned to be built in the future, which if they do undertake to build, they will have to come back before the planning board for, and there will be further site plan review on those other phases. There will be not only further review by the board, there will be a further public hearing in regard to it. And there will be a determination made that whatever it is they're proposing, because they don't know quite how they're going to build it yet, falls within the threshold set in the finding statement you developed under SECRA. So down the road, if and when they come back for those further construction, the further phases, there will be further review. But at least in terms of how that further construction might, at least theoretically, impact the construction that they're proposing to undertake immediately, it's fair game to discuss those things. So if you look at sheet 5, and you say, gee, I don't like the just juxtaposition of the housing versus, which may or be built in the future, to what's proposed for walking trails now, or what have you. It's a fair comment to make. But the main focus of the board will be the immediately proposed construction.
Good. And can you, sorry, board members, either boards, questions for Steve, anyone? From either board? Okay. Steve, one point, could you just clarify for the boards and the public why we're having this as a joint meeting this evening?
There's a provision in your code that says when an application is subject to a public hearing by the CB, not all CB applications are subject to public hearing, the public hearing is to be held with one of the other permitting boards jointly. So it could have theoretically been held with the town board over the zoning change. If there was a hearing before the ZBA, it could have been held with the ZBA. As it so happens, you're here on site plan, and that's why we're holding the joint meeting.
Is that because I like Andy so much?
And that's another reason. Andy's a hell of a guy. But that's the reason legally it's in the code.
Any questions about that? Okay, Adam, do you want to give a very brief review of what the project is for the phase 1 that's within the site plan, please? Because I think most people who are here to comment probably know a lot about it. So let's just do the highlights from Hamlet, if you don't mind.
I will keep it as short as I can. With that in mind, that a lot of people are very familiar with this project at this point. So I'm Adam Stollerow from Cy Paget and Roselle. I'm the environmental attorney for Hudson Valley Shakespeare, and what we're seeking approval on tonight is really for a remarkable project that takes 198 acres of a former golf course and is putting those 198 acres largely back to conservation use on the one hand. Ultimately, there will be 73 of those acres that are conserved. A lot of the additional land will be rewilded, planted with meadows, and habitat created. The other major part of this project, of course, is the permanent home for Hudson Valley Shakespeare, which is a cultural institution here, and thanks to the generosity of the property owner, we'll be able to have a permanent home in Philipstown. So because this project is substantial in scope, we've been at this with the planning board for a number of years now. There was a 3-year SECRA review with many opportunities for the public to comment and very active participation from the public, including during a scoping process where the board sort of narrowed down the issues that would be considered in the SECRA environmental impact statement. And those included the wetlands impacts, it included visual impacts, traffic, and the public had an opportunity to comment on those during the process. The ultimate finding statement was issued in November of last year, and it concluded that there would be no significant adverse impacts related to wetlands, visual resources, or noise, among other things. Once the SECRA process was completed, it went to the town board. The town board approved the zoning amendment in March, and so now we're back for subdivision and site plan approval. So just so everyone has an idea of what we're proposing in terms of the subdivision, parcel 2 in the middle here is the main parcel. It's 97 acres. This is going to be the HVSF parcel. Parcel 1 is a 17-acre parcel that will be conveyed to the Hudson Highlands Land Trust. And parcel 3 is being retained by the property owner as a future private residence. So that's the subdivision portion of the application. In terms of the site plan, as Steve explained, this is really only phase 1, so that's shown in the red outline here. Future phases are in blue. So the red outline here shows here's the theater, concessions, restrooms, back of house, paths in between here, new parking for 236 parking spaces here, some of the internal driveway areas, and then landscaping, grading, utilities associated with that work. The existing entrance at Route 9 needs to be widened in order to accommodate requests related to safety by the state DOT. And because this is being widened here, there's some impact to the wetland buffer, and that brings in the Conservation Board on the wetlands permit. That the disturbance of the wetlands here, and there's also some utility work in this area, amounts to about 17,000 square feet of disturbance in the wetland buffer. That's going to be mitigated by more than double that amount of mitigation area, which includes new planting and invasive species removal of plants all the way around the existing pond, which currently has been lowered approximately 3 to 4 feet. So that edge of the pond is going to be planted with native species that are meant to outcompete invasives. There's also going to be removal of those invasive species in a buffer around that. And our wetland specialist, Jan Johannesson, is going to just sort of walk very quickly through what the mitigation and monitoring plans are for the Conservation Board wetlands permit.
Good evening, Jan Johannesson, KSCJ Consulting, with the wetland consultants for the project. As Adam mentioned, the wetland disturbance for the project results in 17,701 square feet of disturbance. It results from the improvements to the Route 9 driveway, modifications and additional pavement and grading and stormwater improvements associated with that reconfiguration, the proposed dry hydrant for firefighting purposes, an electrical service line for EV chargers, and there's no disturbance to the wetland proper. Everything is within the wetland buffer. It's mainly on already maintained lawn surfaces, so we're not really intruding into any natural habitats. The wetland mitigation, as Adam described, consists of a native planting around the perimeter of the pond and on the banks of the pond, where we kind of, when we dropped the pond, the 3 to 4 feet, it exposed the bank of the pond. That's going to be planted of native species. A planting plan is included in the package. There's a 10-foot wide kind of native, a vegetative buffer around the pond, which consists of native and invasive plant species. We're planning on removing the invasives by mechanical means and replanting native species there. And we've committed to a 5 to 7 year maintenance and monitoring plan, where we'll be inspecting both the invasive removal and the new plantings periodically during the growing season, and submitting annual reports to the town. We've just submitted in April, a wetland mitigation and monitoring plan is submitted to the Conservation Board that spells out exactly what those reports are going to include, including photo documentation and standards. We're planning on, or our goal is to, at the end of the 5 years, achieve an 85% survival rate of our new plantings and no more than 15% reoccurrence of invasives in the invasive species monitoring invasive species removal areas. The other component of our mitigation is the removal of contaminated soils on 2 former golf greens that are proximate to the pond within the wetland buffer. We're going to remove the upper soils that have been identified as having some contaminants from the former golf course use. They'll be removed from the property to an approved facility. Those golf greens will be kind of regraded into the landscape, into a more natural setting, and they'll be revegetated with native species as well.
Okay, great. Your board asks questions, yes, at this point, or do you?
Since we've had a short presentation at the last meeting, I'm not sure anybody's going to have, from the
Okay.
board is going to have any
Typically, the
questions.
planning board does not ask questions in a public hearing, so.
So,
So is that okay then?
Yes,
All right,
we're
so,
doing the same.
great. So let me just walk through the administrative process for tonight, how we're going to do this. We had said we'd do 90 minutes. We've used a good 20 so far of that, so I'd like to keep, if we can be done with the public comments. If we're not done with public comments by 9:30, we may, either board can together or separately keep the public hearing open. So we'll go, I promise 90 minutes is what we're going to try to do. As we, I think, noticed, 3 minutes each. Now, I'm on the board of the MTA, as many of you know. They put together the Metro North Committee with the Long Island Railroad Committee. And some people come up and they say, well, I want 4 minutes, 2 + 2. And they go and say the same thing twice. They just change the name. So tonight I'm going to ask you a favor. We said 3 minutes per. If you have something to comment on, which is why Cheryl said, if you have comments for the planning board, which is site plan and subdivision, please make them. If you have comments about the wetlands, you have 3 minutes to make them. Please do not come up here and say you got 6 minutes to talk and then talk about the same thing the whole time. It's just an abrogation of what we're asking you to do. So let's all be fair. We don't want to be here all night. And I think, as Adam said, we have heard many of the topics, which means, you know, we understand what the public feels on both sides of the topic. Please speak on topic, and I am, as I try to keep you on topic, but also be very strict on time. We're going to keep a timer here. And as I said, if we find in either case, jointly or separately, that we find that there's remaining comments to be made, or for other reasons you may have, we can keep the public hearings open or close them. And each board will vote at the end of the session for whether to keep them open or close them. So anything else, Steve, you want to add any other commentary?
No, I think we accept public comments. You'll take them until such time as either the time expires or you run out of comments. When that occurs, I'd suggest, since the Conservation Board is attending the Planning Board's meeting, it would be appropriate for the Conservation Board to vote first. A motion and a second, either to keep it open or or to close it. And then the Planning Board will likewise make a determination. If you both decide to keep it open, then you may want to say, we're going to do it jointly, but that would be the Planning Board's decision, since you'll vote last.
Okay. All right, so Cheryl's going to read your name. Please come up here and state your name. You can state your address if you want, and then I will start timing. And please tell us if you're going to talk about both topics or just one. Okay?
Rhonda Donahue.
Hi. Thanks all of you for the incredible amount of time you spend doing these things. I would like to talk about both topics, and I'm going to talk about what I know least first, which is conservation. Hi, I'm new to the Conservation Board. I have been reading, okay, as far as I understand it, you received the mitigation plan that, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name. Your first name is Jan, right? Yeah. Okay. That Jan just briefly described shortly before your meeting. So have you all had your own comment and parsing of that plan, or are we a little premature? I was a little confused about the conservation hearing.
This is not a back and forth thing. You're supposed to just give us your comments.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right, so then what I read, who knows if this is right, in some of the zillions of documents, is that a part of the conservation issue is the further draining of the pond, and I understand about getting rid of invasive species and putting in native species. I am concerned about the lateness of the plan and the speed with which it seems to be propelling when I know that regular mom and pop families who are looking for working in wetland buffers can take a year, and some of them even give up because it's just too hard because of bonds or other issues that are expensive and time consuming. So I'm concerned about timing, and I would like the appropriate amount of time to be taken by conservation in looking into all of this, because it's super important to us, or we wouldn't have been doing this for 4 years. Ish. Okay, so it is my understanding that there's an option or possibility, perhaps is a better word, for the pond to be further drained and to return to its creek state. I mean, I'm using the term creek, stream, I don't know, whatever, moving body of water, and for the dam not to be repaired. And I wanted to, because I can't ask a question, I just wanted to state that if that is the case, I would really like for Jan's firm, which I assume it would do because I've watched him on TV many times, to address that, which is, he did not mention that just now. So I'm a little confused about reading and hearing the presentation on conservation. Okay, that is the end of my comments for you, Mr. Galler, because I don't know enough to make more, okay? I now would like to comment, oh, okay, I'm long, wow, okay. I would like to comment about the site plan. The site plan, it's a big and generous piece of land. And in addition, the applicant has received a lot of tax dollars, federal, don't know the exact amount, 3 to 5 million from Sean Patrick Maloney, state, 10 million from Kathy Hochul, New York Arts thing, and also with the change of the zoning law, nonprofit status granted by the town. So with those tax dollars, I would really sincerely ask of the planning board for you to please request that the applicant offer alternative sightings for the theater building. It blocks the view. There's a lot of space there. They've been having theater without blocking the view for, I don't know, it might be 2 years now. And it is so important. I read every letter submitted to the planning board over this long period of time, and even for people who have been what we call, sorry, it's tacky, this is how life is, pro-Shakespeare, or opposed to Shakespeare, meaning we want to mitigate the plan. Nobody wants the theater building to block the view. Please request alternate locations. To that end, I would also like for the planning board to seriously consider, and I know that you have given up way too many of your Sunday mornings, to seriously consider another site walk. It has changed so many times. The last time we had a site walk, we had a bridge. We don't have a bridge anymore. It changes a lot. It's a lot of money. It's a huge development, and it's very significant for our town. So my asks are request alternate locations. It doesn't mean we have to accept them. At least they can be looked at. And if that is the case, may we please have an additional site walk. We are providing the funding ourselves. I, again, thank you for all of the effort you have put in and continue to put in. I did it before the ding.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I have to thank, what is your first name, sir? You. Yeah. Oh, fantastic memo on the status of everything. So many things are outstanding. We need to. Yeah. Oh, Aaron. Oh, that was you. Oh, I'm sorry. You moved chairs. You moved chairs. I'm so sorry, honey.
Robert Cutler.
Great job.
Say it again, Cheryl.
Robert Cutler.
The microphone.
Thank you, Chairman Zuckerman. I'm going to talk about two things, and I'll do it very quickly because of 3 minutes, so forgive me if I sound like one of those auctioneers. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the indoor theater. I was dismayed, I was upset to see it withdrawn because I always thought it was a great idea. And I'd like to, and I wrote a letter to the planning board a year ago on April 3rd, 2023 about that. I'm going to read 2 lines. To my dismay, the all-year theater has been withdrawn. I told Chris Davis that I was very sorry to see this go, and he did not disagree with me. He and I are not the only ones who feel that way. A discussion of that is the main point of this letter, and I have copies of this letter which I can give to you guys. I sent it to the planning board, and I have hard copies here as well. At any rate, I can't go through all in detail all the reasons why it's a good idea, but if you are selling tickets, number one, if you're selling tickets 12 months of the year versus 3 months of the year, you're going to increase your chances of financial survival, and that's a good idea for Shakespeare. Number two, if you have an indoor theater, it eliminates all the sound problems, which is a very big deal for a lot of us, the neighbors. It also is good for the brides because I think the weddings have an issue too with sound, so it eliminates all the sound problems. Number three, as we know, as we go into the 21st century, the weather is going to get windier, heavier, and wetter. And if I were a developer putting on these plays, I would be happy not to have my sales tickets inhibited by bad weather. It'd be great to just be indoors and not have to worry about that. Number four, there are some wonderful actors who live in Philipstown. It would be great if you were putting on plays 12 months a year to be able to hire them. And lastly, for my favorite, which is close to me, are the creatures who live in that hill, 78% of which are nocturnal. If you have an indoor theater, it doesn't disturb them when they go to hunt to survive. So the winners are the creatures, the actors, the developer, and the neighbors. Everybody wins with an large indoor theater, just one large indoor theater. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I'm going to talk about is an idea which may, Chairman Zuckerman, go into your file of Cutler's worst ideas, but it's...
I don't have such a file.
You don't? A neighborhood subcommittee. Boards, of course, create subcommittees from time to time to deal with specific problems. When I was at Boscobel, one time we decided to scrap our strategic plan and write a brand new one. We had a small subcommittee of 5 people. We sat down, we wrote it, and it worked out well. What I would really, really like, and I think a lot of the neighbors would really, really like, if you would consider the idea of creating a subcommittee, a neighborhood subcommittee, to talk with us, not in these august surroundings, which are a little bit intimidating for some of us, but in an informal setting where we could just talk amongst ourselves, and I think it would push the ball along a lot further. I think we would like the idea of a neighborhood subcommittee. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Cutler.
Okay.
All right, Cheryl, next.
Jessica Mandy?
Don't have a file.
Hi, Jessica Mandy. I live at 89 Fraser Road. I have a quick question on the subdivision. So you're subdividing into the 3 parcels, but the main parcel that also has the phase 1 and then you've got phase 2 for the housing. I want to make sure that they're not going to then come back later and do another subdivision, like a 0-lot subdivision for the housing and sell it off at a later date. I mean, would they be able to? You know, that's just a guarantee I'd like. I'd rather not have all the housing there. And the second is on the site plan approval. So that's just for, you know, I just wanted to know what that was for. That's just for the road construction. But have you heard anything from the DOT about the light? You know, I've spoken to the DOT before, and they said they'd never put a light there because the Travis Road wasn't lined up with Snake Hill, so it was very difficult unless they took land from the other side. And that's it. I didn't use up all my time.
Okay, thank you.
Joe Regulate?
Hi, Joe Regley. I don't know if I need 3 minutes with the Conservation Board before the Planning Board, but one comment was made. It's John? Yeah, Jan. You mentioned a 5 to 7 year monitoring plan, and that actually ties into an issue that I would like to raise with the Planning Board, and this 5 to 7 year monitoring plan presumes that 7 years from now that the Hudson Valley Shakespeare, if it is in fact Shakespeare, because who knows what they're going to be putting on, is in existence. And what are the financial ramifications, and what is the solidity of the organization that's undertaking this entire development? When this move up the hill started almost 4 years ago, we were told it was a small community group moving their tent from Boscobel to the golf course. We were told that this was happening so that the golf course would not be developed. We now have a $20 million development happening on the golf course. Had Splashdown come and said, we want to do a $20 million amusement park on the ridge of the golf course, we wouldn't all be here because it would have been dead on arrival. But this thing started small, started neighborhood friendly, moved up the hill, and now we've got this enormous development happening. And in keeping with the request to keep it off the ridge, I see no reason for this tent to be on the ridge other than ego. Anyone who's familiar with the topography of the golf course, and another site visit would be wonderful, the topography of the golf course, the 11th fairway is the ridge, the 10th fairway is below the 11th, the 9th fairway is below the 10th. The old pro shop and parking lot, that whole area is at I would guess the northern end of 9 and 10. Well, it's the southern end of 10, but the topography is such that you could site the theater there. It would be below the ridge. It still has an extraordinary view out to Newburgh Bay. The sound transmission out of the theater would not be off of a ridge and blasting out into the atmosphere. It would be going down into the foliage. It would be more practical because it's closer to the existing parking lot. And it would do a number of things, and it would address a lot of the major concerns that people in the community have about putting this big, enormous structure on the hill. And not to be uncomplimentary, but the picture here, is it all right if I use your photograph for a second? This picture is, in my opinion, more than a bit deceptive, because where's the river? This whole thing is set up in such a way that it perches up like a bird on a... Pardon me?
Can you finish up your comment?
Okay. I didn't get like a minute for the conservation. I didn't talk about this.
Talk about the wetlands?
Yeah, I said that...
Do you want to talk about the wetlands?
Pardon me?
Do you want to talk about the wetlands?
Well, that was the question about the 7-year enforcement of how's that going to happen?
Keep going. We'll give you another 3. Sure.
You can have mine.
So it doesn't work like that, John.
No,
but
all
that's
right,
okay.
no, that's fine.
Keep going.
No, the other question I had, last summer I was out and I saved a snapping turtle that was about this big. I had to herd him across back towards the wetlands, and I don't know whether that's an endangered species or not. I was, because this thing was about this big. I hope someone's going to be looking out for this guy. But anyway, I really think that this thing, unfortunately, going back to that, because of the length, and these boards are more familiar with the length of this process than any of us here individually, it started out as one thing, it's now something entirely different. And I do think it's time to bring it back to the beginning and take a look at it from the beginning rather than this incremental approach. And I would, I'm sorry to ask for more of your time, but I think that's important.
Thank you, Joe.
Tim Donovan?
Thank you. Two words that have always struck me about this area are pace and scale. Pace and scale. It's always been impressive. It's even the way people deal with one another. pace and scale. We try to keep the scale down, the pace calm. Right? And I don't get that impression from this project. I tried to stay away from it for a while, and I looked at it, and I do appreciate the time, both boards, and I appreciate the process. Based upon what I've been reading, there appear to be two segments to the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival business. One is a not-for-profit segment that includes the theater grounds, outbuildings of private residence, gardens, and housing units for use by actors in season and rented to guests. The second one is a for-profit hospitality segment of the business with food, beverage, and dining room for hosted events. Recently, the Times had an article about how challenging it is for nonprofit theatrical businesses and how many go into bankruptcy. No one goes into it for that, but reality can bite back. We are all adults. So I have two questions. What happens if the Shakespeare Festival nonprofit fails and it does not have housing on the grounds? Well, if it doesn't revert back to the state, as it gets reorganized and re-envisioned, aspects to suffer will include grounds, maintenance, infrastructure, the theater, the gardens, walkways, but the for-profit dining, wedding, and event business should be fine for a while due to a presumed backlog of reserved dates. Number two, what happens if the nonprofit fails and it has 25 to 40 year-round housing units on the ground? Much of the impact will be much the same, with the key difference being the likelihood of people living on the property needing services the owner is obligated to pay for, who is now in some way, shape, or form in trouble financially. Once the owner can no longer pay for it, often the town and perhaps the county become obligated to provide services. This is just a fact. While no one expects this, within 30 days, residents are legally within their rights to establish residency, and they deserve services that residences, pardon?
Conclude your remarks.
Yeah, just one more paragraph. That residency bestows. To reduce the exposure to the community, I propose the planning board consider requiring the housing units of the business to be carved out of the nonprofit and placed into the for-profit business segment as a condition. If this project does develop, the protection to the community will be significantly increased. The hospitality division will share revenue with the nonprofit division, theater division, maintenance, attention to detail, and housing maintenance will be improved, and the jurisdiction could insist on greater control over it, and property taxes will be generated for the school community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Susan Coleman.
My name is Susan Coleman. I know many of you, and I live at 40 Travis Corners Road in Garrison. I wanted to speak briefly about the siting of the theater, but mostly about the proposal of a traffic light. We picked the land we lived on largely because it was quiet. We listened closely before we made our purchase. It was a huge criteria, both the siting of the theater on top of the ridge and the proposed traffic light, as currently conceived, threatened to create an unnecessary disruption of what has been our peaceful and quiet enjoyment of our property. Placing the theater on top of the ridge will not only increase the sound that carries, but it feels like a sacrilege, I've said it before, of a uniquely beautiful place. And I'm sorry this is judgmental, but it feels dominating, arrogant, and short-sighted, and not in keeping with the environmental values of this community or values that Shakespeare expresses. I hope there will be a decision to reconsider and bring the theater down off the ridge. With regard to the proposed traffic light, I speak on behalf of my family and many neighbors, including Kat Guthrie and Kevin Spath, Marilyn Young, and Eric Erickson, Robert Cutler, Betty and Frank Stafford, Madeline and James Ray. We all live very close to the intersection of Route 9 and Travis Corners Road and use it on a very regular basis. Our interests are safety for ourselves and the entire community. We know Shakespeare feels the same. Avoiding the creation of unnecessary noise as trucks coming from the south, many of them carrying heavy loads, have to downshift and put on brakes. Unnecessary pollution, frustration as we wait at the light. We believe that further study is warranted to find the optimal solution to that intersection. We don't believe the developer has studied the safety of the traffic light, just decided that it was the answer, said we want it and we'll pay for it. The DOT has not done a study. There needs to be more review specifically with the community's perspective in mind. Many of us living in the area are not comfortable with this traffic light idea as currently conceived. It scares us. We hope you notice this and that it means something and is respected. It seems to us there might be better options to this situation. For instance, the signage that was added in recent years heading south is a good start, flashing yellow lights and subsequent red flags. This could be added from the northbound approach to the intersection as well. For the north, you could also have a sign that says, dangerous intersection, 40 miles per hour. There could be a blinking light at Snake Hill and ditto at Travis. And perhaps there could be some kind of light at the entrance to Shakespeare when performances are happening. In other words, a combination of things that would be much, more appropriate. Also, communities have been using simple traffic rotaries that slow people down, increase safety, and reduce pollution. We're not traffic experts, but we think a traffic light might be knee-jerk, but not the most intelligent option. Our interests are, I've got 2 more seconds, are in summary, everyone's safety, slowing people down, avoiding pileups, preserving the quiet and rural character of our community, considering how to move truck traffic as quietly, safely, and as possible, keeping the air as clean as possible, avoiding unnecessary waiting and frustration at the intersection that is often very quiet. We respectfully request that further study for maximum satisfaction of all these interests be undertaken.
Thank you, Susan.
Mr. Saunders?
That's you.
We're addressing a serious case of false advertising, and in that we're not doing Shakespeare in the coming season and not committed to do Shakespeare at any time in the future. However, we're granting by this spot zoning a monopoly to this property and forgetting about all the other fine cultural things that take place in Philipstown and in the Hudson Valley, the Depot Theater, the chapel, the fundraising concerts. We would not have the Clearwater had this type of zoning been in, and we had no venue for a proper Pete Seeger concert, which raised the money to lay the keel of Clearwater. There is the spot voting apparently is in total defiance of our residential zoning, with a mob scene of houses and huge amounts of parking with hundreds of cars. There's a high level of panic about the Fjord Trail and its parking problems. We're dancing right into it. It's appalling, the difference between the quality of the non-Shakespeare versus the quality of the beautifully performed Chicago by the Haldane Players. Terrific show. What I've seen of the Shakespeare, they might as well not be doing Shakespeare because it's appalling.
Sandy, we're
So
not,
anyway,
we're not talking about the programming
all I
here.
can say is that spot zoning to grant a monopoly to a failing operation and destroying a large acreage and water tables and all the other problems which we're familiar with by overdevelopment, I say don't do it. The best thing to do about a bridge across the Hudson is don't do it, do the tunnel. The best thing to do about the Fjord Trail is don't do it. People would like to boat on the river and not just walk on a paved trail. There's a whole lot of things we shouldn't do, and spot zoning of this property is probably the most obvious. Thank you.
Stephen Wallace?
I just want to remind people, let's just stay on topic here. We're not, this board is not assessing the nature of the programming of the festival, or it's not relevant to the topic here, so just please. Thank you.
Hello. How y'all doing? This is addressing planning and site specific. Hope y'all can kind of see this. Here are 6 individual houses in an oval shape, semicircular, right here. Here is the bridge to my house over here. My house is there. My other neighbors are here, and that's about maybe 400 feet or so. 2 summers ago, I'm hanging out with my wife, upstairs, we have the door open, and about, I don't know, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm hearing voices, and there's no one down on Philipsbrook, and it was clear. And I'm up high, that's going to be up high, and my concern always, I said this multiple times coming in front of other multiple boards, is like I came up here to live in quiet and to live in nature, and my concern is, well, I'll just say, I said this in front of the town board, like when I go to the beach, I said this before, like I don't want to go where all the people are, I want to go away from them, and I don't want to hear them, smell them, see them. I want to be in nature. And that's the reason we bought our house, of where we are. And my concern is that there's 187 acres, I think, in the property. Like all the other like little houses or single houses are clustered down here, where in the that's the west side of the property. They're down here. There's not really any neighbors over there to affect. My neighbor next to me up here has heard clearly the sounds even from just regular events over at the venue, at the Garrison. And the idea of them being here, open air kind of thing, circular, is concerning. If the actors come back, they want to have a little talk, they want to have a little party, I don't want to hear them. This is RC10, this whole zone around here. That's 10 acres. So that is a tremendous concern for me, and I would like to ask that it be seriously inspected or looked at, because there's plenty of places to put that. They don't have to put it right there. And if, again, I'm not going to come after, I don't want to come out like yelling at people or something like that at 1 in the morning, but I deserve the right, my right, to have peace and quiet. My other concern is, again, it's been mentioned, is the siting of the theater. That's pretty high up here on the ridge. I've walked there.
Stephen, can you conclude your remarks,
I'll
please?
just go, this is important just to say. This is.
I know, but we've been very public. We're doing a 3-minute.
I understand. I'm just saying that it's up on the ridge, and there's plenty of great views. This has been said already tonight. And I have a concern of where it's sited, how it's sited. my direction is over here, and if, like, they build this, right, and I start hearing it, or if this becomes a concert venue at some point in the future, and I'm hearing it, it's not like we can just turn it around or change it. There was no study done from that spot to my house or my neighbor's house. So I just want to, okay, I hear you, but I just want to bring that up seriously, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marilyn Young?
Hi, my name is Marilyn Young. I live in Garrison, just off of Travis Corners, a half a mile from the intersection at 9, and I know it well. Councilor Flaherty spoke about the dangers of the proposed Route 9 Snake Hill Travis Corner traffic light at the May 18th, 2023 public hearing. And I agree with the councilman and would hope what he says as a first responder would be respected. A more moderate approach needs to be considered, and he suggested a blinking yellow light. And they're asking us to have a light 24/7 to mitigate their traffic on Friday and Saturday night performances in the summer. It just doesn't seem like a good balance. And I'm just going to say 2 seconds, yeah, it would be a shame to develop that beautiful field and top hillside of open space where they plan to build with the hope of increasing ticket sales. I mean, I understand that's the dream, is to have the view for the increased ticket sales. But I mainly want to speak about horticulture and gardens, because that's what I do and I know about. And I've worked as that for over 20 years locally, and I've worked at the Public Garden Wave Hill. It's a cultural center as well, and I now serve on the Stonecrop Board, and I'm inspired by the Perkins family and their legacy of land conservation in the Hudson Valley, from the Palisades on up here into Philipstown. That would be Glenwood, Stonecrop Gardens, and the Therapeutic Equestrian Center. What they have done and what is possible encourages me to speak out about this development. And much has been made about the gardens in the wildflower meadows. My neighbor and I went down to look at the application and all the site plans, and thanks to your report, your memo, they're missing. The landscaping plans are not there. They're missing. So I have nothing to even look at. And then there are plans for the Conservation Board detailing the removal of invasive plants around the pond and adding native plants. And it's very short, but that's a long process. That is not an easy process either. Invasives are very tenacious, and I know, as somebody personally who has just 1 acre of land that I treasure, I've taken on Japanese knotweed, and that is not easy. And when you have an invasive, you have to come back. I'm not even sure, I don't use pesticides by my wetland because I don't think it's the right thing to do, because it's not good for the wetland to use a pesticide. And that they're talking about following up with that. Is that it?
You want to keep going wetlands?
Okay, I walk my dog around the pond. There's a lot of invasives down there. And I think the magnitude of the work at the pond alone is daunting, but then they're talking about gardens and meadows up to this. I mean, that's a lot. And if the pond's lowered, they used to use the pond for irrigation. What are they going to use for irrigation for all this new planting? I'm just concerned. I do want this to work. I think all your work on Magazzino has made a real win-win, and I thank you for that. And I hope that this comes out to a better solution.
Thank you. Thanks.
Tim Nolan?
Hi, I'm Tim Nolan. I live in Garrison. I wanted to reinforce the notion that you've heard 3 or 4 times before, that the site of the theater tent should be reevaluated. I would encourage you to have a site visit to the top of the ridge line on which it now is poised to be put, and to request of the applicants alternative sites for the tent. There's nothing more important in Philipstown's rural character, rugged rural character, than the existence of our of our view sheds and our ridge lines. Town code preserves ridge lines if they're enumerated. This ridge line, for whatever reason, isn't enumerated on the ridge line overlay. Go there and tell me that it shouldn't be. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Benjamin?
Okay.
Carol Marcon?
Carol Marquand from Garrison. I think other people have said most of what I wanted to say. I did want to say that citing the theatre on that ridgeline, to me, is slightly crazy, because it's going to be open all winter, apparently, just left there. And we live almost up on the ridgeline above the theatre, and it's crazy in the winter. I mean, the wind and the rain and everything comes right up the river, and they'll go right into that building, that beautiful building. And I also think that one of the great things about the siting of the tent at Boscobel was, in fact, that when you were in the tent, the backdrop was the mountain just rising up ahead of you, and maybe, the sun setting in the sky. But it wasn't a detailed thing, and it was closer. It acted more like a backdrop. And I think this one is a beautiful setting and a beautiful view, but it's more complicated. It's more distant. I don't know. There's no foreground at all. And I think another site might be better. I just also wanted to say that presumably it's Chris Davis who still owns the site, is it? Or has it been conveyed? Yeah. So I don't know whether it's he who has been cutting down the trees, the one on the ridgeline where the tent might be, and the ones in the alley, and presumably the one by where the entrance has to be widened, that's come down too. And these are big trees. They're like, the stumps are 2 foot across, and the stumps look healthy, except by the one by the entrance. But then when I read there has been no approval, I thought, why are these trees being cut down? There are other trees being cut down as well. And presumably there's a reason. I don't know. Maybe there was something wrong with them. But anyway, that's just a comment. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Marcy Fisher?
Hi, Marcy Fisher. I live on at 22 Coleman. I'm very familiar with the all of those sites. I'd like to talk a little bit about the site plan. First, thank you. I don't know how anyone can read all the documentation that's there. I know the team has a great amount of support with you guys. Unfortunately, the community can't afford a great legal team like you. But I did want to talk about the site plan, and specifically to talk about the traffic light that is proposed for the Snake Hill and Route 9. I would really ask that the board take a very hard look at that. I come out of Coleman every day and at all different times of the day, and quite frankly, it is already a difficult exit. And at my house, I can hear trucks all the time. You know, we live up on a hill, so we can certainly hear the trucks slamming on their brakes when they're starting to come down that hill. It's only going to get worse, and I'm not dramatic, but I am sure there will be some sort of accident when some truck that can't slow down slams into a school bus or a car or something else, and everybody here that said that it was okay can hold themselves responsible for it. So I would really appreciate if the board could take a really hard look at all of that. And I know regarding the site plan itself, HVSF, which I don't know what we're calling it now because it's not Shakespeare anymore, did say that it was part of their brand DNA to cite so that you can see the river. Well, since it's not really Shakespeare anymore, I don't know why that has to be part of the consideration set. And those are really the key things that I'd like to say, and thank you for all of the work that everybody does.
Thank you.
That's all I have on.
That's it? Does anyone else want to speak while we're here and all convened? Going once? Going twice? Okay, floor is yours to vote on whether you want to keep the hearing open or closed, right? Yeah.
So I have one question for you, Mr. Gaba. Normally, the Conservation Board does not hold public hearings, except in a joint situation. I just don't want the Conservation Board to have a restrained calendar, because I think it's going to take us several meetings, meaning several months, to look at plans, give input on those plans, and get changes.
Well, the appropriate thing to do would be for the CB to keep the public hearing open if you're concerned about time constraints there.
So, in that case, do I have a motion to keep the CB part of the public hearing opened? Okay, and a second? All in favor? So it's unanimous, yes?
One thing though, when will the public hearing be
I think
continued
that-
to? You really want to announce a date so that you don't have to publish?
My inclination would not have it in our May meeting, but to have it in our June meeting, so it would give us time and the applicants time to make changes.
What would the date and time of that be?
Cheryl?
June 11th?
June 11th.
At 7:30.
And when, where will that be held here?
Yes, here.
Okay, so that,
Tuesday.
this public hearing as far as the freshwater wetlands permit will be continued till June 11th at 7:30 here.
Okay, thank you. All right, planning board members, can I have a motion to close the public hearing? You don't want to?
For the CB?
No, we did this, we're back to our board. I can't see everyone, so any planning board member like a motion to close the public hearing? No one does? Okay. No, it's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So I kind of don't understand.
Okay.
Because
Here, grab a mic. I'm sure they can't hear you.
I guess my question is, so if we close it, we're closing for site plan,
Correct.
right? Site plan, and subdivision.
Correct.
So then what happens if CB keeps their public hearing open?
Continues on its own.
But how
There's no
do,
bearing on you.
but aren't we supposed to kind of like understand exactly what CB has to say before we can?
Well, you can hold off on your decision. You don't have to keep it open for public comment if you want to wait, but if you do want to hold it open, you can.
Okay.
Okay. Other, you seem
I'm
perplexed.
a little confused on, you know, if they come back with a comment that might affect our input,
Just to be clear what Steve just said. Steve said we can close our public hearing, meaning we don't need more input from the public,
Okay.
but we do not have to make our action or determination until we hear from the CB.
Got it.
So we're closing the public hearing. Go ahead, Peter.
Okay, so it's not that problem that you talked about before, putting the cart before the horse. We still have-
I don't know if the cart is before the horse, but I do know that we're two separate boards, and so the difference is we're saying that we've got the word from the public, and my guess is you've heard as many of the comments as I'm sure you can predict future comments if we kept our public hearing open for the planning board.
correct.
Okay, so.
I'll make a statement vis-à-vis the Conservation Board. We are not exclusionary. We really work to be within the ordinance that the town has given us and work with the applicants to adapt what is best. So I don't see us denying, I see us perhaps making significant changes to what's being proposed. I don't know if that helps everybody on the planning board in their decision.
What's clarity?
Okay, let me try this one more time from the planning board then. And I can't really see Joe or Heidi, but can I have a motion to close the public hearing for the planning board portion of this application?
Can we have a little bit more discussion?
Yeah, let's get can we just get a motion in a second, or maybe we can't even get one, then we can discuss and then we can vote. That's our typical process. So, thank you, Dennis. Second. Thank you, Laura. Okay, discussion. Heidi, floor is yours.
Why don't we just keep our hearing open until we can hear from the planning board what they...
Conservation.
Sorry, the conservation board as to, what they plan to do and what the public thinks about what they're doing. I personally don't understand what the proposal is to do with respect to the pond and the plantings around the pond. I would move to keep our public hearing open.
So let me just clarify, so it's a thoughtful point. I think the question is not that we will not be barred, we as the board members, from further comment or input on the project. What we're saying is we will close the public portion, meaning the public commentary that you just heard, from staying open. I'm not suggesting you vote however you want, but your input is not being restricted at all. We can wait to hold off on any decisions we make until we hear from the Conservation Board. But what it's saying is if we vote on it, we do not need more public input on it.
But I guess what I'm saying is the public input about the pond could affect what we do. And so I would prefer to wait to hear what the public input is about the pond before we close our portion, even if it's hard to predict what that public input it's very scientific. So frankly, it's a little bit hard for me to predict what is going to be said about the pond and how that might affect the rest of the project.
Look, I'm not going to debate it very far. I think we have a significant amount of material and input from the secret review on the pond itself, on the mitigations about the pond. And so if that's sufficient for you to make a judgment call, that does exist, but we also have the choice to keep it open. So other comments, we're still in discussion. Anyone else has a view? Thank you, Heidi. No? Peter? None. Laura? Joe? No. Okay, so all in favor say aye. Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? Okay, 1. Okay, motion passes. The public hearing is closed for the planning board portion. Thank you very much. I think we're concluded with this portion of the evening. Steve, you want to just share, while we have so many members of the public, what the next steps are for the planning board portion?
Well, the planning board now goes on to consider, having closed the public hearing, whether to grant or deny, or grant with conditions, the subdivision application and the site plan application. You'll speak with your consultants. Apparently, you'll receive further input from the CB. There are certain time limits which we're either going to have to meet or extend, at least as far as the subdivision goes. But I'm sure those can be addressed, and that's the next steps. It'll lead you up to a resolution.
It suggests from the tenor of the board that having the input from the Conservation Board would be a very important, valuable input for us. So I suspect we will be, if that butts up against timelines, we'll have to address those with the applicant. Okay? All right, thank you. We're going to move on to our last order of business. Thank you, Andy and the Conservation Board. Max, thank you. Fellow planning board members, please come back to the dais, and we'll conclude the evening with the Lake Surprise Revocable Trust. Hundreds of things you do that I can't do, include building things. I'd trade for your skill over my skill any day.
We have one more item. Maybe they would give you a walk around. I don't know. I'm sure that they're very nice people.
Okay, can we... Happy to see friends and neighbors. Can you please leave the room so we can finish the planning board? Folks, can you please leave? Thank you, unless you're staying for the lake surprise. Folks. Hey, I'll see you. Thanks, man. The floor is yours. Tim, we got to get our business here.
I'm all right.
Glenn, no, I'm not. You're always. You're all business. You even matched the tie with the steep slopes there. Very good.
It's Manhattan.
Oh, you're new. Are you a resident now? I heard you're a resident.
No, I'm not a resident.
That's 13% income tax. So you better start.
I'm not a resident.
Did you hear this? Glenn Watson is now a resident of New York City for tax purposes. It's on the record now, Glenn. At least you're not south of 60th Street because you can start paying congestion pricing. All right, folks. All right, thank you. All right, Glenn, the floor is yours.
You have an application for an open area development, two-lot open area development subdivision of a piece of property on, take this thing, on Lake Surprise Road. Property has frontage. It's a 51.6 acre parcel. The applicant wants to create a open development area traveled way and a new lot, 6 acres. So there'll be a 45 acre parcel which already has a house and a garage and an approved apartment on it, and there will be a new lot with a proposed dwelling on it at the front of the property. Pretty simple. No wetlands. We need a referral to the state parks. The 239 referrals for a subdivision. We hope you prepare, schedule a site visit if you're going to do a site visit, and schedule a public hearing.
Sweet, short, and efficient. Thank you. All right, Ron.
As the applicant explains, it's a two-lot ODA subdivision. The parent parcel does not have sufficient frontage on Lake Surprise Road, and so a private right-of-way is proposed to be constructed to provide frontage to the new lot. One thing that was not mentioned, but it was just an oversight on Glenn's part, is that the existing driveway, which will become the private right-of-way, will require a variance from the zoning board. Your code requires a 14% maximum grade on that access. I'm hearing some objection.
I beg to differ. That requirement comes in Chapter 112, the land subdivision regulations, for 14%. That's not a zoning matter. It's actually and it's actually waivable because it's in the subdivision regulations. So we would ask. I will submit a request for a waiver on that, but I don't think I need to be sent to the zoning board.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll confirm that separately. Some board is going to have to waive the 14% requirement since it exceeds that. There's referrals to be made, as was indicated, to Putnam County Planning under GML 239N, Putnam County Department of Health for the proposed well and septic for the second lot, the new lot. And there's a variety of steep slopes on the property. They're not specifically being impacted, but Town Code 17536B suggests that referral is typically made to the Conservation Board for their comment. There's no approval requirement from that board, but there's a referral that's typically made. There's some specific plan revisions that should be made as the project advances through the proposal, and then you could start considering some actions tonight just to move it along. I'll confirm whether or not there is a ZBA requirement, but apparently the applicant believes it's not necessary. So that may stay within the board's purview. The project represents an unlisted action pursuant to seeker. You should initially declare it as such tonight and then determine whether you're going to make a coordinated environmental review with the other involved agencies or an uncoordinated review to keep that discussion just at this board level. There's referrals to make, as I've indicated, and then, as the applicant indicates, the board should determine whether you wish to have a sidewalk for the property.
Okay. Steve, any comments?
The only thing I'd say is if it turns out that the ZBA, Ron covered it well, the only thing I'd say is if the ZBA is an involved agency, then you're going to be much better off with an uncoordinated review, because if it's a coordinated review, the ZBA is going to have to wait until you're done with SEQR before it can act, and if you don't know if the ZBA is going to grant it or not grant it, it makes it more difficult. So my advice would be to do an uncoordinated review.
Okay, board members, questions? None? Heidi?
Well, I know there's a huge wetland right at that corner because my husband is there every night helping frogs across the street. I'd love to, I want to see the site visit because there, he saved almost 1,000 frogs this year. Frogs, toads.
It's only April.
Yeah. Well, this is the crossing time for you.
Oh.
You wouldn't know, Neil.
I wouldn't know. I don't follow
It's not your
frogs.
thing. It's not your thing.
Not my
But
thing.
all I'm saying is I find there's so much wetlands there. It seems amazing if maybe this is an upland property, but I mean, it's a very wetland heavy area. I just want to see it. I just want to see it for myself. Yeah.
We're going to go. Don't you
Yeah,
worry.
yeah.
We'll go. Okay. I have one comment or question on Ron's memo. Ron, you mentioned a concrete monument will ultimately be required along the private right-of-way. What is a concrete monument? I don't feel like I've noticed that before.
Normally, property boundaries, you typically require on subdivisions to be created that monumentation be provided at corners, typically to identify the town right-of-way. I would not specifically be concerned about the ODA roadway, but if the highway superintendent wants any monumentation along Lake Surprise Road, it would be appropriate, and it's permitted to be requested from this board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're an hourly employee, aren't you now?
Now I am.
Yes. so
Well,
that's-
not hourly, I'm on a salary.
Oh, you get a salary. That's so
I'm a
nice of her.
salaried employee.
That's really nice of Jennifer. Your name's on the door, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but
All right, some administrative then. Can I have a motion to declare this an unlisted action? I guess, can I do the uncoordinated at the same time, Steve?
Yep.
Okay, and an uncoordinated review, please.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Laura. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. A few referrals now. I have a motion to refer this to the County Planning Board.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Peter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Referral to the Department of Health for the County of Putnam.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Second, Laura. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Fire, we still do?
Yeah, fires.
Yeah. Can I have a motion to refer this to the fire department for a courtesy review?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Second. Thank you, Peter. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Referral to the Conservation Board.
I think we should.
Thank you all. I got a first, second, and a third in that one. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. And finally, Cheryl, the calendar. Site visit.
Looks like Sunday, 5/5 or 5/12.
5/5 or 5/12.
5/12 is Mother's Day.
Okay, well, Mother's Day ain't gonna do it, I'm sure.
5/5 is Cinco de
Oh,
Mayo. 5/19.
all right.
That'll be like-
May 5th, does anyone have a problem with May 5th?
I'm okay with it.
May 5th? Okay.
Bring margaritas?
Sorry?
Can you bring margaritas?
At 9:30? Sure. I'll bring breakfast tacos. How about that? Okay. All right, motion for a May 5th, 2024 site visit. Is that okay with your client? okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes. You'll duly notify it. And anything else in this matter?
Would you consider scheduling public hearings since it's
No.
only a two-lot
Come on,
subdivision?
seriously. Jesus Christ. That's why he. Anyway, that was not a surprise, Dennis.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Anyway, anything else in this matter? Hearing none. Oh, please.
Is there a number on Lake Surprise
Yeah,
Road?
really.
Yeah.
60.
Cheryl's going to send a calendar invite for everyone. All right. Anything else in this matter? Hearing none. Any new business for the board? Richard, you got anything for us? No, just hanging out. Free coffee. All right. All right. Motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second. Thank you. All right. All good night. Thank you.